With over 898 Pokemon out there, it's quite easy to forget a few along our countless journeys. Of course, there's the shining stars of the group, such as Charizard and Pikachu, but what about the others? What are the most forgettable Pokemon? I'm looking for the Pokemon that make you say, who? Now, I'm an incredibly forgetful person and really terrible with names, but even I can remember the mass majority of Pokemon out there. But unfortunately, there are a select few Pokemon that I just flat out forget entirely. Whoops. Trying to determine which Pokemon was the most forgettable was pretty difficult, because if I'm able to remember them, they're not really forgettable, now are they? So I took it upon myself to look through the entire National Dex in search of the most forgettable Pokemon. Two honorable mentions I'd like to bring up are Stantler and Basculin. Both of these little bastards just barely escaped this list, and it's all thanks to Legends Arceus. If it weren't for both of them receiving regional evolutions, they would have definitely been low on this list. You've won this time, but I'll be back. And with a vengeance. Anyways, onto the list. Number 10, Scatterbug. If it weren't for this thing being the Caterpie of Kalos, it would have been much lower. Scatterbee has a stupid and ugly design, so I don't even want to remember it. It also has an incredibly monotone color palette, so it doesn't really stand out among the crowd of early route bug types. The only redeeming factor about this thing is its final evolution, Vivillon, which has many different patterns for its wings. But let's be real, the Pokeball one's the best. Number 9, Barraskewda and Arrokuda. Despite them being from Generation 7, which is still pretty recent, I often forget about them. And if you actually believe that previous statement, that just further proves my point. They're actually from Generation 8. And they're both pretty boring fish Pokemon, both design-wise and type-wise. Pure water? Really? You would think a Pokemon based off of an arrow and a skewer would at least be Steel type, but I guess not. What a disappointment. Number 8, Maractus. If I'd made this list a few years ago, Maractus would have definitely ranked lower on this list, but it became known as one of the most forgettable Pokemon, and as a result, it now had a reputation of sorts. Finally, something to remember Maractus by, which is great because I actually really like Maractus, but apparently not enough because I still forgot it existed in the first place, even with its new reputation. Being a single-stage grass-type Pokemon doesn't really do it any justice when it comes to being memorable, and its stats aren't exactly something to write home about. I mean, they're decent enough, I guess, but not good enough to be a prominent member of your team. Number 7, Skiddo and Go-Goat. These two guys right here were promoted extremely heavily during the months leading up to X and Y's release. The reason being was that you could ride a Go-Goat around in Lumio City, and people were hyped. But this feature was incredibly underwhelming once we finally got to use it. I guarantee you that everyone rode a Go-Goat once, realized that it was really lame, and never did it again. What a complete waste of 200 Poké Dollars. Guess I gotta beat up more kids, not that I'm complaining. After X and Y ran its course, both of them just kind of fell into obscurity. And this isn't entirely our fault. Skiddo and Go-Goat have not been obtainable in any regional decks ever since their debut, which is honestly extremely surprising and kinda explains why I forgot about them in the first place. Yeah, sure, Go-Goat is an assist trophy in Smash Bros, but what do I look like, a filthy casual? Number 6, Seel and Dugong. Here we have the two least creative Pokemon from Generation 1, and that's saying a lot because its competition was Voltorb and Grimer. One's literally a ball, and the other's a sludge thing. But Seel and Dugong really take the cake. Seel is just based off of, well, you guessed it, a seal, and Dugong is a manatee. But the thing is, they just flat out don't have memorable designs. Voltorb and Grimer really stick because of how absurd they are. But these two are literally just real-world animals. And on top of that, Dugong has pretty mediocre stats. They're extremely balanced, which is terrible because it doesn't excel at anything. Why would I use what's essentially a zoo escapee when I could use the Loch Ness Monster over here? Number 5, Swalot. I'm only putting Swalot here and not Gulpin because, well, we all know why Gulpin's unforgettable. Gulpin needs no. But I genuinely forget that Gulpin evolves sometimes. On top of that, this is one of the few Pokemon that I consistently forget the name of. I guess it really just doesn't stand out with all the other purple blob Pokemon, like Grimer, Muck, Ditto, Goomy. Its stats are also pretty bad. It's well-rounded, and as I mentioned before, that's a bad thing. Number 4, Shinshao and Lantern. For having such a cool type combination, these two really aren't memorable in the slightest. I completely forgot what generation these two even came from. At first I thought Generation 3, but I remembered that Generation 3 only brought 3 new Electric-type Pokemon, those being Electrike, Manectric, Fussil, and Minun. But Rogue, that's 4! And to that I say, too bad. Fussil and Minun might as well just be the same Pokemon. Anyways, Shinshao and Lantern apparently come from Generation 2. Who would have thought? Which kinda explains why nobody used them. Ampharos is a staple of every Generation 2 team. And it makes sense because Ampharos has amazing stats. Lantern stats, on the other hand, are actually complete garbage. Its attack and defense are both 58, and its special attack and special defense are both 76. Why would you balance these to be equal to one another? To make things worse, it's also slow, and its design is also just kind of boring. The more I research this Pokemon, the more I'm starting to hate it, so let's just move on. Number 3, Helioptile and Heliolisk. For being one of the first few Pokemon X and Y revealed, this thing was forgotten about pretty quickly. And it's not its fault. People really loved Helioptile, and I, along with many others, thought it would be the pseudo-legendary of the region, but it ended up just being a normal Pokemon. I mean, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be bad, though. I wonder what kind of Pokemon Heliolisk evolves into. What do you mean Heliolisk can't evolve? Yep, you heard me right. This thing doesn't have a third stage evolution. Its stats are alright, but this is such a missed opportunity. I'm calling it right now. Heliolisk is going to get a regional evolution sometime in the future. Maybe then it'll actually be memorable. This thing has only been catchable in 2 Pokemon games, those being X and Y and Sword and Shield, so no wonder I hadn't seen this thing in so long. Number 2, Finneon and Lumineon. Despite Lumineon being notorious for being a forgotten Pokemon, I still forgot about it. That's kind of impressive. It's one of the most boring Pokemon out there. It's just a fish! A blue one, but still a fish. It has incredibly mediocre stats, with its highest being its speed. But what's the point if this thing can't even hit hard? This thing has appeared in a lot of Pokemon games, and even then it doesn't stand out in the slightest. Before I reveal who the most forgettable Pokemon is, I want you all to leave a guess down in the comments. And no cheating! Anyways, number 1, Pincurchin. I always forget that this thing exists. In my mind, it's just a worse Snom. Alright, it's not my fault though, okay? Snom and Pincurchin, and even Pyukumuku, all have the same general shape. Snom and Pyukumuku are just so much cuter and cooler than it, so it just kinda gets overshadowed, you know? And it doesn't really help that I didn't even find this thing in my Pokemon Sword playthrough. Or maybe I did and I just forgot. Who knows, but the point still stands, this thing is not memorable in the slightest. It doesn't evolve, so there's not even an evolution line to associate it with. If you somehow remembered all of the Pokemon on this list, then wow, I'm impressed. But what'll really impress me is if you knew all 25 of these Pokemon facts in this video right here. I can guarantee you're gonna learn something you didn't already know about Pokemon in that video. Anyways, thanks for watching, and remember to subscribe if you haven't already. Bye!